All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Next up, I am thrilled to welcome Denise Tilles, a trusted advisor to companies like Insights Partners and Red Hat, and an amazing member of our Product Ops HQ community. With over 15 years of product leadership experience, Denise will share how to strengthen product operations without adding the headcount. She's also the co-author of the book Product Operations with Melissa Perry, which will actually be giving away a few free copies during this session. So with that, over to you, Denise.
Thank you. And thank you for saying my name right. I've heard it botched so many different ways.
No problem.
Great to see everybody today. Sometimes I feel like I'm almost promising the impossible, like you can actually have product ops without new hires. Is that the ideal state? No, but we'll talk about sort of where we are in the world and what it looks like to get this started. So without further ado, let's get going. A little bit about me, as Leah mentioned, I've been in this product bracket for about 15 years. On the operating side at B2B SaaS companies like Cision and media companies like Condé Nast. And the last 5 years, I've been advising companies around product management, product operations, and co-authored the book Product Operations with Melissa Perry. We had been working together advising and came together to write this book, and it's been an amazing reception, and hope you guys get to win a copy. I do advise companies like Bloomberg, Red Hat, Nova Nordisk on product practices and how to leverage product management to accelerate time to value for their companies. I coach CPOs and VPs and, all sorts of ways of getting at that accelerated value, right? So the functional maturity of a product team, skills up leveling, product ops, introducing it or understanding how to up level it, and how do we introduce the operating model. A couple of my clients, as I mentioned, and the book. And we've been talking about this, but we're going to be doing an audiobook finally, and an update to the book all about AI. So we'll have an AI chapter, and we have a really great case study. Can't tell you just yet who it is, but look for that toward the end of the year. We're very excited to share that with you all. Alrighty, so let's get to the matter at hand. How do we do product operations with no new hires, right? Seems kind of crazy. I'm going to give you guys 4 things you can do today, and hopefully you'll come away with this energized, excited to try some of the things, and we'll save some time at the end for questions. So I'm going to talk quickly so we have plenty of time. So our reality, right? Layoffs are still a threat. And it's funny, I gave a talk last year about why product operations was more important than ever. And layoffs are still happening. So I don't see it going away. The era of free capital is kind of gone, right? So this is where we're at today. This is from today. I grabbed this. July was kind of a shit month, but yeah, we're having layoffs. Layoffs are happening. And it's hard if you don't have product operations to make the case why you need this enablement team. We all know this is sort of the secret sauce, the force multiplier to help us make product management better and eventually, increase time to value. But this is the reality of where we're at today, right? And we're hearing about all of these layoffs every day. So in this environment, especially, companies need to have that rigor and focus around where are we placing our bets? How do we monitor them? Are we spending our resources in the right way? Can we track how we're using our resources? That tends to be a challenge at a lot of companies, I hope. And then how can we be those champions of change to help, think about the culture and how we think about making faster and better quality decisions with the data we have, and hopefully increasing the capabilities of data availability. So product ops is the key differentiator. I'm sure you guys are here because you believe that. Just to reiterate quickly what I mean by product operations, I think people have different flavors, and that's cool. The way that Melissa and I define it in the book is 3 ways, 3 pillars. And I find this really helpful for having conversations with your management team or the exec team, because they're like, product operations, everyone kind of has a perception of what that is. But we sort of put it into these 3 pillars: the quantitative side, right? Business and data insights, the qualitative, the customer and user insights, and then ways of working, processes. People get a little allergic to that word, so maybe ways of working, the operating model. How do we scale value with cross-functional support? So when I talk about it, it's in this context and lens. So as we know, product ops helps us answer, right? Is the strategy working? Are we using our resources in the right way to support the goals and not getting to the end of the year and going, wow, we spent 20% of our resources towards the strategic things and I'm being exaggerating here, but 80% of that on customer kit commits or sales debt, right? So we want to have regular monitoring to understand how those resources are being allocated. And then as we think about where we're going, are the roadmaps informed by data and customer inputs and not hunches, right? Um, so product ops helps, right? Because product managers do a lot. We all know this. Some of us are former product managers, right? Product ops helps PMs focus on the things they were hired for, right? So company growth, getting to the business goals, really tying the work towards revenue, the customer value, that's really you create that and hopefully the revenue comes. And working well with our stakeholders to make sure that their point of view and their needs are being brought into the whole mix as well. So how do we enable product ops with no new headcount? And I don't have a magic wand. I can't make that happen right away. But I'm going to give you guys a couple of tips on how you can make it happen in sort of a small way, like it's sort of proof of concept. And we'll talk about that. So the first step, right, is to prioritize your biggest needs and opportunities. Where are those? What do they look like? You want to identify your gaps from the perspective of those three pillars, right? Business and data insights. Do all of the product teams have the data enabled to help them make faster and better quality decisions? Um, do the product managers have access to the qualitative insights? And some companies are really fortunate to have user research, but sometimes what I end up seeing at different organizations is that they have this amazing UX research team, but they're almost used like as an AI search tool. And could you find? I heard that we've done some research on X. Can you find that for me? And they're just kind of searching and sending decks. There's so much better way to leverage their talents and skills, right? And then how are we working? Are our teams spending so much time talking about how to do the work versus doing the work? How do we sort of give them enough leverage to move? Everyone understands, here's how we're road mapping. This is what the template looks like for that. We're doing PRDs. How do we actually structure those and how are we tying those into a roadmap or a roadmap tool, right? So it's about working faster. I was presenting to a team last week in Ireland, a company called Forest that does uh, beauty, and spa treatment management software. And the CPO said this, and I thought it was really smart. He says, you just giving a little freedom, you go a lot faster, right? So a little bit of discipline gives you a lot more freedom. And I really liked the way that he put that. I thought that made a lot of sense. So the common gaps, you guys may recognize some of these at your own company, right? So and it's interesting. I'm seeing this now. I wonder if you all are as well. An over reliance on either engagement data, product health data, more of those leading metrics, or revenue data in the absence of the engagement metrics. And a couple of companies I've been helping have so much revenue data, but not much engagement data, which it used to be the other way around. So it's an interesting trend. But either way, you may be over relying on one or the other. When I was at Condé Nast, that was a privately held company, and we would, launch new products, and we would understand how our users were engaging with it, but we had no idea how the revenue was being impacted because they kept those numbers close to the chest. You need both, right? Not having both sets of engagement and revenue data is almost like doing product with your arm tied behind your back, right? As I mentioned earlier, the roadmaps, not necessarily data backed. Having that R&D visibility, understanding where we're using our engineering resources. Are they actually supporting the strategy? And speaking of strategy, how are we monitoring it? If we figured out that we've got maybe a cascading product strategy, which I'm a fan of, how are we making sure that we're actually tracking back to deliver on our strategic intent? So how is that being monitored? The customer and user insights, right? So the bi-directional feedback, have we set that up between customer support, sales, marketing, user research being squandered? This is another trend I see of a lot of companies still with all of these amazing tools, having a lot of their research just sitting on the desktops of PMs. So how do we unlock that and, atomize it into um, insights, provocations, trends, and really make sure that we're leveraging this to the fullest. In fact, there's a new book that just came out by Jacob Burkhart called No More Wasted Research. And I just started. It's a great book. But that really is it. And I'm seeing a lot of that right now. The companies have invested in the UX research, but they're not necessarily leveraging it in the right way or in a broader way and having those insights siloed. And then ways of working, we don't necessarily, the leadership, let's say the CPO doesn't have visibility into the team's work, and maybe they're looking at different roadmaps and different formats. Some are expressed at like customer outcomes, other are more at like feature level. And it's up to the CPO the night before the board meeting to like put that all into a coherent document. When you're growing from one product to a portfolio, and we talk about that portfolio management strategy, I know Dragonboat is really key enabler for some of that. And the documentation, another challenge I see are companies that having trouble just with documentation, keeping up to date, making sure everybody knows where that is. And within that, the product artifacts that product managers rely on aren't necessarily templatized or people don't know how they should be doing it. So they're spending time like, how are you doing this? What template are you using? And that's just wasted cycles. Let's focus on the work. Let's focus on the customers. Let's focus on the revenue. So step two, I want you to think about what you hate doing. Your product managers, as Claire Vo has advocated, right? Find the annoying tasks and then test the AI solutions. You want to make your anti-to-do list. So what does that look like? Track your annoyances for a week. Log every task you find annoying, repetitive, or a waste of time. And then think about that magic question, how can I not have to do this again? Then we start thinking about automation. One of my coachees has been on the fence about hiring new team, and she probably could get the head count, but she's like, I just want to make agentic AIs my bitch, pardon my French. And she's like, I want to see what I can do and leverage out of that before I actually hire a head count. So I fully applaud that and think about how do you not do certain tasks that are lower value that you can focus on the higher value ones. And then you start thinking about AI to automate and testing out different tools. That could be around monitoring KPIs, aggregating customer stories, onboarding tasks. The takeaway that I am so in alignment with Clairvaux is that think about what you need and then think about the solution. Don't be a solution chasing the problem. And I see some of that. We're so excited about these tools. Melissa Perry posted, I think last week, about people so excited about these tools like Replit, Lovable, et cetera, that are we all starting to create the same products because they're coming from the same tools? Maybe not yet, but it's something to think about. So using it in a really intentional way. And then you want to think about what's your AI strategy, right? So where is that partnership between AI and product management and being really intentional and clear to the whole company, how you're leveraging it, where you're leveraging it, and where the human aspect of it is coming in. So you want to think about delegating the drafting work and thinking, sharing that with the whole company. Here, we're going to be, making sure that we're tracking meeting notes, transcripts, et cetera, documentation in terms of taking a first stab at maybe a strategic initiative, our analysis, taking a first cut at some research we've gotten. And then how do we leverage AI to really make sure that we've made the space and time for product managers to focus on strategic work, right? So strategic alignment, making sure our partners in the company are on board and understand where we're going and how we're supporting the company's vision, right? Cross-functional operations. We talk about this in the book, the Super Friends Council, where we've got sales ops and eng ops and marketing ops and design ops. And I spoke about this last week at the Design Ops Summit. Omni Ops, are we going there eventually? And I'd love to talk about that next year and see where we're going on that. What's our strategy for scaling? How do we get there? How do we go from a pirate ship to a Navy ship? What does that look like from here to here? We have to have some sort of understanding of how things scale. And then the tools and systems, right? What are the most important ways of working that we want to give some definition around? Doesn't have to be hard and fast, but people are normally like, just tell me how you want us to do it and we'll do it. The whole point is making more space for people to do the work and not think about and talk about how to do the work. So the third step is to identify someone inside. So we'll talk about that. Are there any internal candidates today? Is there someone on the team already that might be interested in this? People like Christine Atuaro, who started ProdOps at Pendo, that's how she started. She was a product manager just trying to get ways of working more aligned for her team and then fell in love with that. But it didn't exist initially. And that was, I think, 5 years ago. Someone that likes, just creating order out of chaos, that might like helping on a side project and loves the cross-functional collaboration. They love systems thinking, right? And nothing makes them happier than a data-informed roadmap and getting things right, not letting it be the enemy of good, but just making sure that we have provided everything product managers need to make the best decisions. And this may be in their role today as a product manager, but thinking more cross-functionally across the team. So there could be someone on your team today, but we'll talk about how you maybe leverage them. It's not like you just move them over one-to-one. So this is my point of view. The typical PM focus and capacity, ideally, right, is sort of in thirds. We think about the strategic aspect, the operational, the tactical, right? But in reality, it really looks like this, right? We're kind of mired in the tactical with backlog management, things like user research, road mapping, strategy. We kind of get to it, some data analysis, we kind of get to it. But how do we get out of this? And then how would we actually make more time from this for a product ops resource? So what we would do is recast this focus. And I think if you make the case like, this is what it's looking like today, and whatever your percentages are, what if we just took, you know, Mike, who's super interested in scaling systems and, thought about how we do a time-boxed project and outline the 3 top pressing gaps and a quick win. What if we just allocated 40% of his time for 3 months and start to define what success could look like? And then your manager, your CEO, your CPO might think, well, what do we have to lose? Couple of people I've advised on this have tried this and were really surprised how quickly their managers agreed to it because it was time boxed. And we're like, here's what we're going to do. We're putting our money where our mouth is. And we're going to talk more about what that looks like to make the case. How do we put those compelling proof points together, right? So getting the buy-in from your managers, you have to make sure you're super upfront about the pain points, right? What are the most acute areas of need? Don't give them a laundry list of deficits. I'm sure we could all come up with that, right? But think about the 3 most important things that could actually impact revenue, customer satisfaction, internal satisfaction, right? What is the impact of those pain points? Typically, I love to find a project that didn't go great. We lost money, we lost customers. It, was 6 months late in delivery. Find something that you feel like if you changed this, you could actually have an impact. So it might be lost or potential new revenue. Nothing gets your executives to look up more than the revenue part. Delays in strategic initiatives, the roadmaps that aren't going to move the needle. And then you put together your hypothesis of that potential solution. Be specific, give them a metric, a quantitative metric that you'll measure to prove value. And highlight the biggest gap and opportunity. If you could lay out 3, great, but get them on board to understand, like, right today, we're still sort of, driving our car over this huge bump in the road. What if we smooth the bump out and we could go faster? So being specific, being targeted, and being tactical in terms of what success will look like can make a huge difference. So how do you put it all together, right? So this is really a proof of concept. And if you put it that way to your managers, I think they get less allergic to like, whoa, you're moving one of my resources. No, 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 no. We just want to understand if we made some changes here, we made some adjustments, some improvements, could we go faster? And then what would that look like to attack something else and find something else? You'll have the conversation later about opening the aperture of that person's responsibilities or discuss what it could mean to maybe hire somebody. A lot of products folks, as we know, are, being laid off. I'm sure there's a lot of folks right now who'd love to come on freelance and help your company. So the 4 things we went over, right? So prioritizing your needs and opportunities, your anti-to-do list, identify an internal resource, and make the case. Keep it tight, Be super specific. Be ready to hear no, and then make sure you ask like, well, what do you need to understand, or what do I need to bring you to make the case for this? Because I really think this will impact revenue, satisfaction, et cetera, whatever metric you come up with. Um, Common challenges, some things that I've observed helping companies. I've gone through this myself as a product leader. Um, Focus on all the data. So like I mentioned earlier, some companies are really deep in either engagement or revenue. Make sure you're thinking about all of that, the product health, engagement data, which typically tends to be leading, the revenue that's more lagging. So make sure you're thinking about all of that data, and quantitative too, right? You need to get buy-in from the top. If your CPO is on board, great, but make sure the CEO is aware of this POC, just to make sure that there's, more um, approval around the company, especially as people start talking about what you're trying to do. The culture counts, right? So being super transparent about this. This is an experiment we're trying, slowing down to go faster, and this is what it looks like. So that could be an all hands, just a few slides, just being really clear about what we're doing and what the outcome, the desired, the problem and the outcome. And then finally, just making sure you're really targeted, hone in on the areas you think that you really have a good sense you can make an impact there, rather than boiling the ocean. Find something, a quick win, and then maybe something longer term. Thank you, guys. I have a few things for you before we get to questions. I didn't want to leave you guys empty-handed. So a couple of resources for you. We have a Product Ops Masterclass coming up in October, and Melissa and I wanted to offer our Accelerate friends $50 off. So I'll give you the code for that. We are launching a product operations accelerator, sort of like her chief product officer accelerator. This is going to be for slightly more mature individuals and teams that have been doing it and are ready to take that next step. And if you have any questions or want to talk more about our conversation here today, feel free to get in touch. And here is the way that hang on here. There we go, that you can do it. So you can just snap that quickly and you can grab all of these things. So I thank you guys for your time. I get really excited about this topic. Why don't we open it up for questions?
Awesome. Thank you so much, Denise. We've got a little bit of time for questions. I've grabbed a few from the Q&A. The first one was more around the product ops professional development side, about finding product ops folks, finding cohorts, peers, mentors, things like that. I did drop the link to the product ops HQ in the chat. Any other insights that you might be able to share in
Yeah,
terms of it being a relatively new career field?
it is. And people are hungry to connect, right? So definitely, as we do the master classes, these are people that are either in the field or new and thinking about what it could be. You kind of have this ready-made community when you leave. We have a Slack channel and whatnot, but also with this product operations accelerator, we're going to be creating cohorts that are going through the program for a couple of months. So you're really developing deep relationships, and nothing is better than that sort of personal board of directors, someone that's going through the same thing as you, that you have things to bounce off of. Because if you're an individual, a team of one, it can get lonely. So if you snap the QR code here, there's a link to sign up to learn more about the products accelerator, but HQ as well.
Yeah.
Good one.
Awesome. Yeah, and then the next question is asking, have you seen a link between the value of product ops at the stage of a company? When does it sort of shift, in your opinion, from a product ops being a nice to have to a must have? What's
Oh,
kind of
that's a
that
good
yeah,
question.
what's kind of that sweet spot?
That's a really good question. I'm working with a startup that's just gone from 25 to 50, and talk about going from pirate to Navy ship. And they're like, we got here, we don't know how to get here. So as if your company's doubled in size or suddenly gone from a startup to a scale up, that could be a really good time. I've also seen sort of scale up towards enterprise stage. That's also a sweet spot. Um, Typically not at the startup stage, but I think the most impact is that a scale up to enterprise. That's where I've seen the most impact. But also, there's enterprise companies that have never had it that add it, and it makes a world of difference. I guess the only thing I would say is not startups.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. And then the next question, we've got time for a few more. So, what are some approachable ways to fold product ops into existing teams without creating an extra burden? Particularly, they're asking around areas like data visibility and customer insights.
So what was the beginning of the question?
Approachable ways to fold product ops into the existing teams.
Okay. Hopefully, I've given you guys a couple of tips
Yeah.
on how to do that here. You can also think about it as super projects
Mhm.
that if you've got someone who's super passionate about data and is so frustrated, it's like, amazing, you've solved this for your pod. What if we could go more broad and we could try to solve, just a slice of it at a bigger scale and get them excited? It also bears considering whether or not you have people internally that would be really excited to do that, that are maybe giving you a slice of that today. So if you have an BI team that all they're doing is sort of cranking out dashboard, not that all, but setting up, instrumenting things, but they might want to really get involved in the strategic so what, and that's how you present it to them. That may be a way to do that as well.
Great. And then this one is around AI. So how can we prevent teams from blindly trusting AI outputs so that we could eventually, so that we don't have everybody looking at the wrong data, wrong assumptions, and fixing the wrong.
Yes, yes. One thing I'm doing right now is where we've had sort of bloops, errors, highlighting that sort of what went in, and then maybe it was a garbage in, garbage out situation, and sort of talk about the prompt and what came out, and then highlighting uh, the inaccuracies, any sort of hallucination there. And then also pairing that with, a prompt that went really well. A lot of people are creating prompt libraries, but just a special one that gave people a lot of leverage, and then showing what went well there and how they still check that in terms of a human eye. I still believe in this partnership. People are worried like it's going to take, it's going to eat the world, but we're still a human element. And I feel like people who understand how to leverage AI are going to be great. But people that can put that AI understanding and strategic and commercial mindset together, those are going to be the superstars that rise to the top.
Yeah, awesome. I think the last one we probably have time for was around the cultural challenges. What would you see kind of as the top cultural challenge that tends to block a successful product ops launch, and how can an organization?
Yeah, I learned this the hard way. I was helping Sam's Club. They wanted to stand up product ops from the ground up. And I thought, oh, they're going to be throwing roses at us. They're going to be so excited. And I had the CPO wanted me to talk to his top people. And as one of them was like super on board. And another guy, I get on the call, I'm like, so pretty cool, huh? And he's like, no, I just want a program manager. And I'm like, tell me more. And he's like, I have my act together. We've got data. We understand how we're working. We have a viewpoint in terms of our portfolio, and I don't need that. And that was the first time I kind of like ran into something, and I was like, okay,
Roadblock.
all
Yeah.
right. Yeah. So I had to like rethink that. And it ended up, I suggested leveraging what he's done and his team that went so well. Let's test it out and go a little wider. It's always my point of view is like start small and then grow it out, as opposed to boiling the ocean, rolling something out across a huge company and then boop, didn't work, roll it back. So we started using them as sort of the touchstone of what good looked like. And that kind of brought him on board. And he was like, oh, I get it. I see what's happening now. And we actually do need help with some portfolio management. So sometimes it's a matter of understanding a little more deeply. But that was the first time I'd ever experienced that. So now I'm a little more cognizant of the fact that everybody may not be on board, or product manager, like, what does that mean to my role? I think people are past that at this point. When Melissa and I were on Lenny's podcast, year and a half ago, he was like, well, what are they taking away from product managers? I'm like, "Buh, buh, 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 buh. No one's taking away. It's a
Yeah.
partnership, right? So that would be my suggestion.
Yeah, and that'll make sense. Yeah, defining what good looks like, and defining the product operations role, for
Yeah.
sure. So I think that takes us to time. What a great session, and a
Thank
big thank
you.
you to you, Denise, and thank you for everybody that joined and put their questions in the chat. And so we've got more great conversations ahead. So I'll look forward to seeing everybody at the rest of Accelerate. Thank you again, Denise.
Cheers.